So I wanted to do a personal vlog today and talk about one of my own songs. It's a song called Caffeine, and it's a published song. It's on Spotify, and you can listen to it on my artist page. And so Caffeine is the first song that I ever wrote. It was something I did while learning my first couple of guitar chords, and for me it was really natural to just start making up my own songs. At the time that I wrote it, I had been learning the song Death or Glory by The Clash, and so I was pretty familiar with the chords from that song. And I started rearranging them, and I haven't replayed the Clash song in a long time, so I don't really remember how closely I was following the original changes or how creative I was. Um, but I rearranged it somewhat. I had one melody stuck in my head that later I kind of realized was part of one of my teacher's songs. He had played it for me one time, and I didn't remember where I had heard it or who it was by, and I didn't really realize that it wasn't my own melody. I kind of realized this way after the fact. But I took those two, made up an intro that was different, and I had a song. And a lot of that process I don't remember as well as I wish I did. But I remember it was in about 2009 or 2010, and I was living in a house that was just north of Huntsville. And it was a house where there were 12 roommates, including me, and the other 11 all did foreign missionary work for a college youth organization called Chi Alpha. And so it was a pretty unusual place to live, and I had a small room, not a lot bigger than the room I'm in now. And and I was right in the front of the house, and so it was a very small room for my bed and a dresser, and that's about it. So I was in there, and I had my mattress on the floor, and I was laying in bed all night and just trying to put my fingers on the chords, trying to get my fingers to land all together as a D chord. And that seemed pretty difficult at the time, and so I was very proud of myself when I got the chords in order. Um, the final chords in the very original version I had were a bit different, though. So the final was D A D G, D A D G, D C, D E minor, D A D D D D D. And the original, the only difference was that there was, in place of the E minor, there was an E major. And when I showed it to my guitar teacher, who is Randy Rost from Black Market Syndicate and Roadside Union, he took a look at it and just right off the bat said, "That's not an E major, that needs to be an E minor, make it an E minor, it'll sound better." And I tried it and I completely agreed. Later on, maybe 8 years later, I had started reconsidering, like, man, I kind of liked the E major there, that was pretty neat. But it was out of place. The song was completed by then. I took my teacher's advice on that, and that's the song. It is one of my only songs. I don't know if I have another. I don't think I have very many others if I do, with 3 verses. Most of my songs have only 2 verses. It is, it has a different verse from chorus. That's something that I don't always do, but I do that fairly frequently. That one's probably half and half. And that's the music side of it. The vocal side is that I think I was laying in the couch in the living room of that house, and I want to say I was watching a movie or something, and I thought of the lyrics for the first verse just looking out the windows, and it just turned into a metaphor in my mind. And so I wrote those down, and then it was a couple more months, and I was in my minivan in the parking lot of a bar called Cecil's early in the morning, like 7 o'clock in the morning, after having stayed out all night. And somebody brought me back there to pick up my car, and I got in my car and wasn't really awake enough to drive, and so I just laid down and was kind of resting, and then kind of had the first verse lyrics in my head, and the second verse I started to have an idea. I think it was something I had said in conversation on the drive to pick up my car, and got in my head that it was similar to the first verse, and knocked that one out. And the third verse, I completely don't remember when or where I wrote it. And I have never completely solidified the lyrics of that. Kind of an artifact of the early writing process. Yeah. So that was the writing process of the song. After that, it became just a staple of every show I've played. I've played that song with every band I've been in where we played songs I wrote. Every single one. It's originally was the first song for every show, but it has now become like very 3/4 of the way through the show song, and that's usually where I play it. And it has been revised a lot of times. So I'm going to go through a couple of the times that I have revised it and recorded it. The first time was when I still lived at the house north of Huntsville. And I had a friend who I knew through Randy Rost, and he lived in the Woodlands, and I got in touch with him, and I asked him, hey, can you help me record this song, and I'll pay you? And he said, well, I don't really want your money, but are you still using your iPod? Because I need an iPod. And I said, well, I'll trade you my iPod if you record it. And so I did that. And so we recorded the guitar, no problem. Well, his recording setup was really neat. It was his bedroom, and he just had his closet full of clothes. And he took the microphone and wound the cord around the hanging bar for the clothes, and then just let the microphone hang. And that seemed really silly to me at first, but actually, with the benefit of hindsight, that is a great recording setup. And so, yeah, I stood in the closet, ran the cords under the door, and I was in there, and he recorded from outside. And we did the guitar, no problem. Then we did the vocals, and that was one of the first times that I realized I didn't know how to sing. And it was really where I realized that singing was a separate skill that had to be learned. I guess it just had never occurred to me at that point that knowing how to speak does not automatically make you know how to sing. And it seems really silly to say, but that was me at that time. And the problems during that recording session, though, those came with recording the bass. So the bass guitar part in that song has an odd rhythm. The notes are played 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And while we were recording it, he kept knocking on the door and saying, hold on, stop, you played that note late, or you played that note early, or that's not where that goes. And he hadn't heard the song, but he was a much, much better musician than I was, and so I took his word for it and kept trying and trying and trying, and after a while I was convinced, like, well, no, I'm pretty sure that I'm playing this right. This is the way I wanted it to sound. And at that point we were tired and we stopped working on it, and I don't know if that one ever got finished, and I don't know if I have a copy of it either. Off topic, but a couple years later he gave me my iPod backloaded with a lot of his and his friends' music, and that was a big benefit, actually, was getting it back with somebody else's music. I used to love going through other people's iPods and just hearing what they were into, and that was a lot more fun way maybe than Spotify playlists and finding music online, was hearing about it from another person indirectly through their collection. And maybe that's what people like about vinyl records a lot too. So going to somebody's houses and flicking through and finding something that you like. Anyway, the next time I tried recording it was at my own house when I lived somewhere else, and that was a pretty big failure. I'm not going to go much into it. About a year after that, I recorded it again in a pretty unusual way, which was that I took a voice recorder, and I took my smartphone, which is my first smartphone, And I used the voice recorder to record the guitar, and then I put that on headphones, and then I took my smartphone, listened to the guitar, and sang. And that's version of it. I recorded maybe 6 or 7 songs that way, and that set of songs I burned on CDs and sold to people for $5, and I think I labeled it crappy CD from the gas station. And that was kind of my scheme for a little while, was that I would get a stack of about 30 or 40 of them and go to gas stations and try to sell them to the attendant to sell at the register. And it was a terrible idea, but oh, to be 22 years old, that was a terrible idea. And I hope I don't ever have to hear those recordings again, because I was not proud of them. Okay, so the next time I recorded it, this one was a good one. We were invited to help a recording engineer student do his homework. He had to record a band playing live, and he needed somebody to come record. And for us, what was in it is that we got to record in a very nice studio. I was told at one point that it was where they did the audio for Star Wars Episode 1, which maybe it's not a good movie, but the audio in it sounded great. So we went and recorded there, and there are more interesting things to say about it than what I will. But I had bought new strings for everyone in the group, and I asked the bass player to change the bass strings, and he said that he didn't know how, and so I offered to do them for him, but I said, we're on a tight schedule, will you change the strings on my guitar, which he did know how to do. And he got it wrong. He put my B string on the E and my E string on the B, and because our recording session started at 10 p.m., the music stores were already closed, and I could not buy another set of strings, and I did not want to record with a different guitar. So I ended up recording the song with the strings reversed, with a very, very, very tight B string and a very, very, very loose E string. Unfortunately, though, out of the songs that we did in those sessions, which we did 5 songs in those sessions, caffeine was not sent to us by the engineer to proof, and he did not complete the mixing on those songs to our knowledge, and then did not keep them after he had turned them in for homework. And so that version of it, although I think it probably sounded pretty good, is lost. After that, I more or less gave up on the song for a while. I'm sure I recorded it 2 or 3 times with Audacity, but I was never proud enough of any of the versions to keep one. And so the next time that I recorded it was in 2018, when I did a draft of it in Logic Pro X, which I use to this day. And that one was much better than anything I had done before. But after such a long build-up, the song written in 2009 about, and not being released until, or not being recorded until 2018, it just didn't sound good enough. So it went in a drawer. All the revisions that had been done to that version, which it had quite a few revisions relative to the way I normally played it. I had added a key change in the end, which I took back out. All those revisions were forgotten about. It just wasn't good. The creative work was just taken off the table for the final version that I would begin in 2020. And that brings us to the final version that is now published, that you can hear on my Spotify, which is William K. Caffeine. So this version I started during the lockdown, all the time in the world, and I had gotten a lot of skill at recording, and I had already had a decent amount of time to practice my singing and do a lot of exercises that were taught to me by my voice teacher, who was a coworker, but her name was Rachel, and she was a very good singer, and I just thought, I should just take lessons from her. If lessons work, I should go ahead and do it myself. So it had the benefit of learning how to sing, the benefit of learning how to use Logic a lot better, and my guitar playing had improved over the years. And so I got a version that sounded very good to me, really punk rock. The only new thing in the version, though, was the guitar solo, which I did write just as I was recording it. The first time I ever used that solo was in 2020 after 10 years. And it is a very simple solo, but it sounds good, and I'm really happy with it. I've been told that the auto-tune on that song is too thick, there's too much auto-tune, and I would say that I didn't actually use that much auto-tune. The sound that people are hearing is my manual tuning of every note, which I understand why people don't like it. It is kind of heavy, but in my defense, it's a song that I had been thinking for so long. I needed to make sure that I had all the notes in exactly the right pitch, or else I don't think I would have ever been happy with it. I don't think I would have been happy with the natural sound of my own voice for that song, because I'd already done that. I'd already heard what it sounds like when I play it many times over years. And what I had been waiting on, I think, what I had been holding out on, was to make a definitive version of the song. A version of the song that will stand up over time and that very, very accurately conveys the main points of the song. So, I hope that you guys will go listen to the song. I hope you enjoy it. If you hadn't heard it already, I hope you enjoy it. If you've heard it before, I hope that you enjoy it more with the benefit of having heard me talk about it. And please enjoy. Adios.